Okay, so here I am. I am ready. And I decided I really mulled over how I was going to proceed with this. And I want to go ahead and read as if like I'm doing my public speakings, So I really did a college course in public speaking. I did not lose one debate speech. One I won by 1 point. And one of them I actually did it remotely, and even though I wasn't in the room, my argument won the debate. So what happened was they read their argument, and then when the class was back, they basically read their argument again, and then from there I said my part and I won. It was about the death penalty, and I don't think we got to pick our side. And it was easier because mine was anti. It would have been very much harder for me to do a pro one. So anyhow, on to what I'm here for today, which is to present an essay I wrote as a speech. And the essay is about To Be Forever Young. It's an essay about the album To Be Young Forever. Not to be forever young. No, I have to keep my mind on the right order of those words. So, the album is an album, a folk album by the wonderful folk artist and indie folk artist and genre fluid recording artist Jim Byron. And the album is called To Be Young Forever. And this essay I wrote is about the album and why it is still so relevant in 2025. And it's interesting again because timelines are always very interesting to me. That this event happened on February 22nd of 1943. I mean, it was a whole proceeding, but the execution of the people we are going to discuss tonight took place February 22nd of 1943. So here's the story. On February 22nd of 1943, Hans Scholl, Sophie Scholl, and Chris Pröbst were executed in Munich, Germany. They were all members of the White Rose Society. Guillotine Blues is one of the songs on this 10-song album that spans for 31 minutes and 6 seconds. Guillotine Blues specifically is written from the perspective of the condemned to death, Hans Scholl. One of the quotes from the song is, "Can't nobody say now, I didn't pay my dues, but it ain't us who will be here to answer for the spilled blood." These lyrics reflect their dedication to their cause and the power of their convictions. It immortalized their stance and on exactly where they stood on the very issue of their own execution for being charged with treason. This was their final stand in the very face of their own gruesome deaths by way of the blade of the guillotine. They were key members of the White Rose Society, which was a passive resistant movement against Hitler and his role in World War II. It was a call to ceasefire. They informed fellow students of current events unfolding right before their very eyes and right under their noses. They were originally arrested for printing and distributing anti-Hitler and anti-war leaflets. So censorship, which is like interesting, and then I woke up on the wrong side of the bed about that today, which, yeah, as a classic liberal, like, that would be the case. So in this essay, we picked Guillotine Blues to use some of its lyrics to illustrate the events that occurred during this form of protest known as passive resistance. As someone who imagined that I knew everything about World War II, there is to know about it. I was amazed when Jim Byron asked me if I had ever seen the film Sophie Scholl, The Last Days. As I began to listen to Be Young Forever, and as I was about halfway through this work of art, I was hearing about this from Jim for the very first time. In all my years, I expressed my disbelief that as much as I had studied WW2, that I had never heard of this anywhere at any other time, even as I regard myself as a bit of a WW2 buff. Admittedly, albeit as of late, I am a bit rusty on the subject of this horrific historical event. I decided right there and then to go discover what I had missed for free of charge on YouTube. Certainly not too much to ask to be well informed. I watched the film. I had to take a few breaks because of its seriousness and intensity. It was getting me where I live. It was very intense and intelligent dialogue. Honestly, some of the greatest discourse I've ever heard about why ending war is ethical and imperative. What is the significance of this in 2025? The significance is that in these times, during war and rumors of war, there's so much rhetoric. AI-generated news stories, pro-war propaganda, disinformation, and misinformation, that it is important to be able to discern what is or isn't truthful. Many times, unless one is there as an eyewitness or a reporter on location, you weren't there unless you were there. You weren't there unless you were or are there. We can't rely on everything the mass media spews at us to keep us up in arms against our fellow man. What else is important about illuminating this album's tribute to the legacy of our world's history during wartime? As someone under the mistaken impression that I had nothing new to learn about World War II, I did. After all, I learned something in 2025. Well, 2024, but I'm reading this now, that I had no clue about just 3 days before. What is interesting about this story? This story talks about three students who were anti-war student activists who lived a pretty wonderful existence before They had full lives until war broke out. Amongst them, they weren't born Jewish. They were raised Lutheran. They were literally put to death for informing fellow students about the atrocities erupting before their very eyes and ears. They could have chosen to infiltrate others who may or may not have actively participated. Upon doing such treachery, which they did no such thing, instead, they met their fate with courage and integrity. They may have received lighter sentences as opposed to being executed by the way of the guillotine. They stood their ground until the bitter end, standing firmly and boldly upon the strength of their faith, truth, mercy, and justice. And their right and true convictions, even unto their very depths. They exemplify grace and possessing the courage of the heart of lions. Until the end, they spoke truth to power and counted the cost. They said, "Today, we stand here being put to death. Tomorrow, you will be standing right where we are. Standing now. Right where we are standing now. Unto death, understanding their sacrifice would help save many more lives potentially." What's wrong with this picture? Stories like this aren't widespread. As more divisive narratives, they're not as widespread as more divisive narratives that tear us apart. Instead of encouraging us to band together and truly become united, seem to be the order of the day year after year. It seems as stories like these are deliberately suppressed, as not to blow the cover of false narratives that fan the flames of fear and aggressions and hate. They made the most of the worst of possible times. During this turbulent election year, we survived and we see who we got. This was written before he won, and now it's going to be read here after he won, just several weeks before the anniversary of this atrocity. There are wars, more rumors of wars unfold across the whole world. Can we take time to pause and remember Hans Scholl, Sophie Scholl, and Chris Pröbst? I want to end this essay by writing a bit more about the White Rose Society itself. The white rose was used as their symbol to represent two things: purity and innocence in the face of true evil. I am going to leave you with two thoughts: Sophie's and my own thoughts. To end this essay, Sophie's last words as she was being led like a lamb to the slaughter were, "The sun is still shining." My own thoughts are, I gratefully write this, post this, and publish this because I can. See you, Soul Tribe.